garage. As you can see, I'm in my garage, and I have black coffee. I've got head protection on, so the back of my skull doesn't meet the underside of that hood again. We are doing some mounting and installation today. Previously, I dry fit the intake manifold, made a couple tiny mods to fit it correctly with the header flanges, because that's, you know, every engine's different and the headers all come in different forms. So for this one, just had to nip a little bit here and there. What else? The new radiator's got to go in. That does not interfere with the, well, you know what? I tell you what, I could talk or I could show you. Well, tools and towels and things a little bit dusty, but here's what's important. We dry fit the manifold. I had to nip a little bit here on the little knuckles to clear where this header flange sits, and that's fine. It's not going to affect integrity or, you know, the full mount. The little tabs will still secure just fine, the ones that go on each little nut to hold the flange down. We're going to pull these headers back, loosen them up, pull them back, gasket, lock the headers down with a new manifold, and we're going to mount the blower, and we're going to drop the carb on, see where we're looking at with hood clearance and how crazy you have to get with opening up a hole in the hood. I may get to radiator today. It's already empty. We've got this beautiful cold case, but it needs to go. I'm putting the Hemi swap cold case in, which loses the trans cooler, so I'll have to get another trans cooler, but also it moves the inlet over the other side, which was necessary because with the blower in place, the snout comes here. And so there's nowhere to put the hose. Yeah, I could TIG weld it, whatever. I'm not going to buy equipment. I'll just swap radiators. I got a car for this to go in anyway, and that's another discussion in another video that I'm pretty excited to show you. But for today, I'm very excited to show you this. We're going to do a time-lapse on my GoPro, and I'll stop and take a video of anything I need to cover as far as the install that you might encounter little road bumps. So let's get at it. All right, I had to pause my music in the background because I don't want to get copyright struck. Look at these gaskets. Isn't that silly? I mean, you're talking the difference of a 1/16 of an inch versus, you know, 3/16 of an inch, and this will crush down 50%. The Remflex gaskets. I've had good luck with them on other cars. I think this is going to work real well. This little floppy POS from, you know, the neighborhood parts store had a couple of sections of blowout where gasket just decided to take a walk. And that's not okay. We need better. And that is better. Okay, we got to pause because some of these studs are not long enough to take the little washers supplied by Aussiespeed and the nuts. And I don't want to compromise. So what I'm going to do is go buy some head studs, some exhaust studs. Pretty standard pieces, so I should be able to get them up the street. We're going to find out. Okay, midpoint. I had to loosen the headers and pull it back so I could go in and remount with a tap all of the holes for the studs. That's an original factory stud. Plenty long, and that's the reason I'm putting new studs in. So I cleared out the rest. But while I was in there, obviously I gave it a little bit of paint, and it's nice and shiny red. Bright red, VHT engine enamel. New gasket sitting, waiting, hanging. Nice and friendly to the mating surface there. I'm real excited because as soon as those studs got here within the hour, we're going to be putting this thing back, you know, starting to put it back together. I haven't swapped the radiator yet. Got a bit of a stiff neck, and laying underneath the car isn't going to help, so that can wait a day. But for now, look at that, right? Big thing, prepping for the new studs. And but paint your block while you're in there. You know, come on, dress it up just a little bit. 10 minutes of masking, 20 minutes of spraying. Beautiful. Now, 20 minutes after I took that last video, I got my bolts, my studs. Now, these are just, they're carb studs, but the chrome Holley, they'll do the job just fine. Now that the holes are all cleaned out, I should be able to put these in with a little bit of Permatex sealant, mostly by hand. So let's give it a shot. A little bit of Permatex on the back of the glove, and let me show you how easy these go in. I'm putting a little bit of the juice on here. Get it in the threads, not heaps and globs, but in all the threads. The reason you got to do that is because this is these are block water jacket ports. But once you clean your threads out with a tap, look at that. Absolutely gorgeous. Finger tight. When you cinch everything down, it'll have plenty of compression force. In fact, these bolts are rated for 120,000 at like 10 foot-pounds, which is how tight we're gonna mount the intake manifold, which is factory recommended. Crush that gasket down. It's gonna be gorgeous. So let me just get back at this while I'm not holding the phone and finish it up. And if you need to see more than one of these done, this is not the video for you. You have to go back to How to Turn a Wrench School. I love you guys. Easy peasy. I went back and I actually decided to tighten them down. And the way I did it, see, you got your long stud here. It's real easy. All you gotta do to tighten them down onto into the head, put two nuts together, take two wrenches, tighten those two nuts together, and then just turn the outer nut. It'll spin this, and then you can use the two wrenches to split the nuts without turning this back. So you just, you know, put the thing in by hand with the Permatex high temp, you know, thread sealant. It's meant for water passages, things like that. It's this little one right there, high temp thread sealant. You know, put them in by hand. Should be loose. If it's not, clean your, you know, clean your holes. And yeah, you'll have a little bit of gunk coming out of the edges, the Permatex. That's fine. That's not even going to affect our gasket or anything. Yeah, and just tighten these two together on the shaft. Turn the outside, the furthest, with the wrench to tighten it down, you know, wrist tight, 15 pounds, not too tight. And then use the two wrenches to break these apart without twisting the shaft. So you hold this one static, you loosen this one will break free without turning the whole thing back and defeating the purpose of tightening down. Anyway, hope I didn't overtalk it, but man, that looked pretty. I'm gonna let the Permatex dry and let the paint harden up overnight, and then in the morning, we're gonna get back at it, and we're gonna put that intake on, and you know, the exhaust, and tighten all that up. And my goal is to have the blower sitting right here. Right here. I can almost touch it by the end of tomorrow. So, not that you care. You're going to be watching this video a week or two after I do all this. But that's fine. Today, I feel like I got some good work done. And thank you to Summit Racing, not sponsored, because they got this to me in a day. I bought them at 6 p.m. last night. There's really a, you know, there's a big benefit to living within 40 miles of your local hot rod parts supplier. Anyway, I'm out. I'll see you on the flip side with some new stuff. We'll put the gasket on, and then we're going to mount up the intake and everything together. See you next video. So I've been using the little camera here for the time lapse. Today, we're going to record what I'm doing. I know it's a little bit of a mess. I apologize, but also I do what I want, so don't worry about me, worry about yourself. Today, we're doing the big job. We're going to mate up the blower. There you go. There's your Remflex gasket. You got to be real careful to work it on evenly all the way around, so as not to flex and crack the gasket, because it will happen. You know, so working gently and slowly is the way to do a lot of this stuff, but especially with these gaskets. There we go. Beautiful. Ports line up perfectly. Absolutely beautiful. The studs are in. I locked them down. I did the 2-screw method. The Permatex sealant isn't quite cured, but we're not going to be running this for a day or two, so let's just put it together. There's really not much to it. Just got to get everything in place. I'm going to put on my gloves because the fibers from the carbon header wrap are horrendous on your hands, wrists, everything, so cover up if you can. These gloves are great. They used to be a lot more affordable, but they're pretty much impenetrable to chemicals, acetone,
urethanes. You know, I've had good luck with them, and these fibers won't go through the gloves. That's my big concern, really. It's just, it won't kill you, but damn, it's uncomfortable. So one thing you can do right off the bat is grab your little nuts here, language. Grab the nuts for the manifolds. These circular are the ones, the original, what is it, bronze, that go on the Slant 6 manifold. So we're going to reuse those. I got the new ARP nuts here, which are fantastic, amazing. We're going to lock down the corners of these headers, just right here, finger tight, to keep it in place so we can put the intake on. And then a couple to keep the intake on and get the other manifold. We're a little tight for space, so I think what I should do is, once I get the intake and the manifolds on, tighten up the exhaust there, and I might have to pause to check a couple line lengths, but we'll get to that. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So I know it's clean because I already blew it out with compressed air. Intake manifold. I didn't show before, but here's the little notches I had to make. Right here, these were knuckles. I had to notch them down to clear the flanges from the Clifford headers. If you've got a header without flanges like that, I think the Doug Dutra's made up to this perfectly without modification. Not a big deal, and honestly, once it's in, you can't see it because that's under those flanges. So, getting it lined up's no problem. It's good. I got to take it off in a second. We're going to put the other header on and then put this back because that's the order it has to be done in. Just making sure clearances look good. And you just hold it in place and see it's mating really flush to that gasket. So that's great. All the studs are clearing the intake. So now let's grab that header and put that on. Come on. There we go. And then we'll bolt the header up when we're done. We have enough clearance for that. It was worse with the Hyper-Pak because that thing's so long, you can hardly reach the headers. This is less bad. The pipe's in the way, you gotta jerry rig it a little bit. Get a better exhaust guy than I did. That's what I'm gonna say. That should clear. Come on. Killing me. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to prop up this exhaust pipe here a little bit. Keep it up out of the way. There we go. Now, both the headers and the intake are notched just a little bit where the bolts go. Necessary. You'll see if you ever get to this point. If you ever decide to do something stupid like put a supercharger on a Slant 6, you'll see. Nice ARP. And there's only 2 of these. These are the original brass, you know, for the Slant. But there's only 2 of them on the engine. The rest of them were wing nuts of different varying thicknesses. Why, I don't know. But we're not using those because I got these beautiful pieces from Aussiespeed. You can see the difference here. You got the laser cut steel and then the old cast nuts that, no thanks, you know, with the old ones, they're not going to suit the purpose here because of the way that the flanges are flush. We want a flush securing fastener, and they're all milled out to 1/2 inch. When I got my Hyper-Pak, all the flanges, I had to actually hand cut them down to exactly 1/2 inch so they would mate up to the intake, or sorry, to the exhaust manifold, and then later the headers. Just a minor thing, you know, whatever. 30-year-old metallurgy casting. The wing nuts might have worked, but for this is a little bit more precision, so I appreciate that they provide the hardware you need to do it once correctly. That is big. So, keep them slightly loose. You see how I have to lift it to clear that? Easy peasy. And now we can finger tight a couple of these fasteners, and then everything's in place, and then we'll tighten up the exhaust before we go putting the blower on and getting in our own way there. So let me get a couple of these nuts and a couple of these little laser cut. I think they call them nuts, but they're more flange fasteners than anything. And put them in a way that's going to cover the edges on both the intake and exhaust. And of course, keep a little wrench handy. Because of the tightness of clearance, an open-ended box wrench is all you need. If you have to go in and get some of the bottom ones, you're going to find that a regular wrench ain't going to cut it. You're not going to be able to get in there with a lot of that. Take a little wrench and modify it. This is the amount of clearance that you have next to the manifold runners on the bottom on a couple of them. So making a custom wrench, I even cut around and made this real low profile. It will save you a lot of headache. Alright. But not all of them are so tight, like this one. I just lift it up and do it by hand here. After we get everything kind of in place, before I go putting the blower on, one thing I got to do is put the support here. There's a support specifically for keeping these things, vertical and flush and, held up to the block, because that blower is heavy as hell, way more than a carburetor. So the original fasteners, you don't want those to be holding all that weight, because over time you might get any of that weight pulling away from the gasket, and then you have sealing issues with either intake or exhaust or both. And on the slants, that's easy to tell on the top, but on the bottom you can't see all that. So it's better to just support your intake manifold so you know you're not going to have to worry about that. So right now I've got a couple of these old fasteners in. Let me get a 1/2 inch here on an extension. And again, I'm just going to, wrist tight this fastener. I'm going to do one on each side of the exhaust that's also holding on a couple of the intake. And when that's close to tight, we're going to place the little support bracket here to see that the length is good and the support's good, because otherwise I'm going to have to go to the hardware store and fabricate something. I really don't want to do that. Okay, issue number one, check this out. Intake manifold here, I have to loosen these bolts and bring the manifold back a little bit. I can't get this nut, this slightly flanged nut, past the side of the runner here, so I'm going to have to loosen this up, the one I just tightened up. And it's only wrist tight, so, no biggie. You will find it's a little harder if you're using the ARPs, because they have this coating on it that acts kind of like as almost like Loctite, really. It's good, it keeps everything in place. See, now that goes right past. I needed that little extra clearance. I think I'll go and do them all, since I know, because the manifold runs upward and away from the block. Down here I should have no problems with that type of clearance and getting past the manifold runners. It's happening on the top because the manifold runner is bowing up towards the fastener. So that'll be kind of a sticking point for you too, if you don't preload your fasteners here. So just giving it a little bit of clearance, and we're going to put them all up on the top end. Maybe on the bottom too. Let's see. You can use non-flanged nuts, but the ARPs are it's just a better fastener. They came with the studs. They're all chrome moly. It's just better. Let's loosen this up a little further. Bring it out a little more. There we go. Now, there's your nuts. I'm going to use one of the ARP washers that came with the studs. Use that up here, the top center. That one is that one is an original fastener there. It's an original block stud. It's plenty long. I would say if it's not broken, don't fix it. But here's the thing: taking these studs out, that top middle one broke, like sheared off, when I went to put the new stud in. And it turns out the studs I had bought, they're cheap. Well, I couldn't get the old one out because it broke my bit trying to extract it, and it was already helicoiled. Not even helicoiled; it's the stud insert in the head. So when this head was cleaned up and refreshed, when it was rebuilt, that must have gotten basically fused into the head. And I don't want to go drilling out giant holes in the head. Sorry, my GoPro cut off. It's got voice commands on it. I don't know. What I did was I actually welded the original stud to what was locked in there from the new stud, and it works just fine. It's got plenty of tensile strength. I tested that. It's not going to be a problem. it's a 60-something-year-old, 60-year-old engine design. It's going to be an issue. Stuff like that, these fasteners, that stuff comes up. You just got to expect it and work around it. So I'm not complaining. Just a statement of facts. I just dropped one of those fasteners. I got to go down and get that. That's not interesting. Well, that's why I'm down on my knees here. No question. That's going to be something you'll face at least a couple of times. At least in my opinion, because what happens when you're trying to get the nuts and flanges and everything underneath, you got to be really dexterous. It's a problem getting in there, but everything works with enough effort and time, right? This stuff's all designed to work together. It's not all perfect, but we can get it close. All right, so now all my uppers are on, and I'm going to tighten them all down, just wrist tight, not the full 10 psi, or sorry, 10 foot-pounds that is recommended for all the intake and exhaust fasteners from Chrysler, but we'll get it close. And you just lift it up, get it pretty flush, go finger tight, and put your fastener where you want it, where it's holding the flanges that you want it to hold. Because some of them are kind of close, but not quite. Close but no cigar. And you can see here, this little stud here. Before, the studs were so short, you couldn't get the wing fastener and the nut on, so that's why I replaced them all. I really had no choice. If you don't do this job correctly, you'll have nothing but sealing problems for the intake and the exhaust. And one and done is kind of my goal with most of the projects that I do. So blah 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 blah. Little wing fastener here. Shake it just a little bit. All right, I'm going to tighten that one. Then we'll just take them to kind of loose wrist tight, and then we can put on all the bottoms. Clearance issues aside, this really is a nice setup. In interference flow heads, they couldn't have really done a good job of putting this as a cross flow head because of the cant of the engine, the 30-degree slant off to one side. It's a tall block, but okay, see now here I'm gonna have to get my little special cut down wrench because I can't get that socket in between the knuckles here and in between the intake runners, so you gotta have this little extra tool. Luckily, I can do most of it by hand because that would be tedious otherwise. You can get thin wall sockets. I just don't own any. I haven't needed them, and if I do someday, I'll go out and buy them. I'm not protesting, but I try and do as much as I can with as little tools because who has the space, really? Alright, I can feel it getting a little tight, and that's just because there's, a little bit of old wear on the original stud there, but we're going to keep going. If it feels like it's getting too tight, I'm not going to go forge ahead because I certainly don't want to break this stud off the weld. That would be silly. You can work it a little bit and try and get it past any fouled up threads, like that. And you can feel it loosen up, so it really is just threads that maybe got a little bit dinged or gouged or, something along the way. Coaxing it is a lot friendlier than forcing it. That's the same with any fastener, I suppose. I can feel it getting a little kinder. I think I just had a couple bum threads in there. And now, yeah, it's going on loose. See, one finger. No big problem there. A little scare because of what happened with the original stud. Not the original stud, because that's what this is, but the replacement stud. I'm just being extra cautious. It's not a weak point per se, it's just rotational torque is a lot more powerful than pulling opposing torque. I forget what they mean, but basically under compression, these will have great tensile strength, and a weld will have great tensile strength for, you know, from being pulled apart. But a twist, this thing applies so much more torque, so much more, you know, many more foot-pounds of, there we go, of pressure on the twist, that you can have a bolt that should take, you know, 150,000 pounds of tensile, you know, strength hold. Like it'll keep anything from getting pulled out, but it won't stop you from just twisting and shearing that stud or that bolt or whatever. So taking your time, if you feel anything fighting you, take your time. It will save you a lot of headache in the end. I was putting some fasteners on the bottom there, and I think I got to take a break after that for a little bit more black coffee, because it's just been that kind of morning. You know, one of those good news mornings, but busy. Anyway, that's not important to you. What's important to you is that I finished putting this thing together. And trust me, you're really going to want the gloves when you're down here with these header wraps, if you use them. Now, my personal advice, use them. They work really well, and they provide fantastic thermal retention. They will keep your engine bay from getting too hot. The other side of that is that they are, you know, they feel temporary. It's not like a header coating. And some people, they use the glaze, the final coating on top of it. It's like a high temp epoxy or whatever. I kind of like the way this looks. It works great. I don't mind a little bit of fuzzy dust when I'm working, because just put on gloves and you're fine. So let's see if I can get this thing finger tight here with the socket can clear. There we go. Nice. And again, I'm just going wrist tight, finger tight, because we're not locking this thing down until I break out the torque wrench. Because you want to do that once correctly. Get the torque, you know, rating on each one of your fasteners here correct. That's a big important thing. This is so much easier than doing it with the other intake manifold. You can actually reach everything here. Get it close. Set your fastener the way you want it. So now mine's kind of bridged across the two of them. And there we go. Yeah, this is going to go pretty quick. Alright, it's starting to really feel firm, you know. We'll go back and we'll lock them all down, but you can feel a big difference as you put it on. I just found an issue. One of these little fasteners is too close to the header. So I got to take the header off, loosen that up to be able to put a fastener on there. And there, yeah, okay, so it's this rear header that's too close to the fastener. So I got to take off these fasteners here and just move the header back a little bit, and I should be able to get the nuts on like I did with the intake. I'm not taking them off, just backing them off. And we'll come back and redo them as we see fit. And I take it back. I might actually have to loosen the whole manifold and pull this back, because this one's a little tight on the nut here. But let's see. Maybe I can get the clearance I need. Maybe. Nope. Now the whole thing's going to have to come back a ½ inch. That's okay. I don't mind. I'm going to probably fast forward through this part of the video because, you know, boring. But what's going to speed it up on a couple of these fasteners is just grabbing the battery and using the Milwaukee. Gotta love these things. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put a little bit of P Blaster on this stud, because I don't want to deal with, you know, the way the nut was kind of not seizing on it, just getting a little tight. This is a preventative measure. That's it. Just a little bit goes a long way. That should help me take this thing off and put it back on again with a little less drama. Man, I wish I had a clean garage. If only there was some kind of elf or gnome or some kind of magical creature I could hire to do it while I sleep. And if you say employee, bro, there's, you know, blue masking tape on my firewall. I ain't got employee kind of money. But at least, you know, if I could, I would. Someday, who knows what they're going to end up doing, but if I could work with cars full time, I'd do it. There's a lot of jobs I'd never go back to, but working with cars, it's a lot of fun. You know, a lot of people don't have the patience for it. I think I've been doing it so long and waiting for so many boxes to come in the mail that I just kind of, patience was foisted upon me. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes we learn against our will. I'll tell you one thing I miss. There's a little dexterity in my right hand because of that snowblower clip. But it's coming back. It's just taking its damn time. Alright, is that far enough now? Let's loosen this one further. Okay. Alright, now I think I can lift that little exhaust manifold up and get these fasteners installed. Let's find out. Again, miss my dexterity. But it's a small price to pay compared to losing your fingertips, right? I'll take the minor inconvenience of working with your hands a little harder than usual. Okay, there's one. This side has 1, 2, 3. Yeah, okay. This side, all the fasteners are present. You can see them if you look down. So I've got another 1, 2, 3 to get over there under that header. We'll get them close. And I think what we'll do is kind of tighten them in sequence, so to speak. All right, 2 fasteners, 2 nuts. There we go. Get down there with 2 hands. One to lift, one to turn. There we go. Beautiful. I'm in. Cool. Let's see. Should be 2 to go. 1 there. All right. And 1 back here. Oh, cool, I can reach that one. I'll tell you, do your stretches in the morning before you attempt this job, or you will have regrets. I'm going to have to lay up on the engine here to get at it. How are we doing on video? Oh, not bad. This is why they say that working on cars is a young man's game. And I'm not that old. But this is still just excessive. Okay, that one's on. I got one left to go. Really deep underneath there. Let's see if I can make it happen. Nut. And a flange. Alright. This is going to be, I think, the worst of them. Really weirdly tucked under there. You know, I might just do the lay on it thing again here. Stay. Okay. Yeah, it's a weird one. Real hard to get to. But not impossible. Almost. Actually, there's the fastener. Now it's just the nut. What did you do today? Oh, I laid on my engine. Got stabbed in the gut by my radiator hose. Nope, not quite. That is brutal. Brutal. Whew, let's see. Maybe another angle of attack here. Wonder if I could come in from underneath here. No. Maybe over here. This is a bad one. Alright, let's try this. Convenient gorilla ramps for when you gotta lay in your car. Alright. So I can feel the stud, just gotta get that fastener. There it is. And then this hand, maybe I'll use this hand to lift the thing. Somebody ever accuses you of being intimate with your car, you can tell them it's mechanically necessary, because this is not fun. That's not working. Alright, I'm going to try coming from the other side. See what I can do. Again, I need a little, tiny little helper gnome to do this correctly. Okay, so the trick was get it from under this side. Held the nut in my 4 fingers and was able to work it on. Because I got the new clean fasteners, I was able to put that nut on finger tight. So you can see I got it from the front, the other side, the top, the bottom. Now we have to tighten them. So at least what I'll do is I'll save you this, you know, talking. Let's do a little fast forward sequence here. Okay, now we've got everything mounted. We went back and we tightened all the fasteners to 10 foot-pounds. They're real well locked down. You can see where the gasket is crushed. These, the rem flex, it's real easy to tell when they're seated because they get thinner. And I can hold this up and I can tell you that thing's about 30% flatter than when I installed it. So that's nice. Should seal real well. I've used them in other projects and I love them. I think I've said that, but I'll say it again. Next, we got to fit this little support bracket up here. So I got to figure out exactly how that's going to go. But this is supposed to mate here. I don't know if I have all the required hardware, but we're going to go see what's with the kit and we'll go from there. I gave this a little polish. Did I mention that Aussiespeed did almost all the polishing on this kit? It's really nice. I think it looks great. Anyway, let me grab some hardware and let's try and get this first support bracket installed. So I went through the hardware that comes with the kit. There's my bracket. It comes with 2 good big bolts, but it does not include 2 of these eyelets. I'm going to go track one of these down at the hardware store because this would be the ideal fastener to have both at the top and on the bottom here to support it, I think, because I've got that funky L bracket there. Anyway, let me go work on this. I'll show you what I come up with as far as solutions. Okay, looks like we got that bracket installed. Actually, let me switch cameras here, B-roll, and show you what we're working with. So the kit included this mounting bracket here, the eye bolt, and the bracket here and the bolts. So what I did was I already had a little mount here from a previous support from my Hyper-Pak, so I just modified that. It's real heavy zinc, so I bent it back. And this thing is real rigid. Shake this, you shake the car. But I believe the bracket was supposed to go down and bolt to the motor mount, but I can't do that with my headers there, which is why I had to figure this out here. Just so you know, it looks like it'd be better if you have like the Dutra duals, which come out up top and turn back and don't cover your engine mount there. So, you know, food for thought, but this is going to work really well. Everything's tight and it fits great. Okay, so here's the fun part. I've got this gasket. Let's figure out the placement. We're going to look at the bottom of the blower real quick. Let me just see. Let's see. Yeah, so it can go either way underneath the blower. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out this middle section of the gasket. There's no crossbar in the intake manifold to support it, so all it's going to do is get sucked off and eaten by the engine, so totally pointless. Now we can take this thing and we're going to take these big bolts out and look down and see where we can line them up. There's one. Now I've got a kind of a flange on the front of the gasket here, so I think I'm going to cut that down, this excess here, just because it'll look better. Cosmetics, they do matter a little bit. Yeah, we're just going to take this front edge off. I can't remember if this is the gasket that was included with the kit, or if this was the gasket that I bought with my rebuild kit from, what was it, Jegs? So, you know, it really doesn't matter. You need a good perimeter seal, and that crossbar in the middle under the blower really is just there for the, you know, the structural support in the blower, not critical to have in the intake manifold. One down. Just a couple of turns to get it straight, and then you can lift up this side and look down and see if your gasket's clear, which it is. Right through the hole. Okay, I'm gonna get the other big bolts for the rear. Cut all of that up until this point. They were sitting right here. Big dum-dum. And scene. Huh. Okay, I got the other bolts. We're just gonna set them in, make sure the gasket lined up with all the holes. Perfect. You can feel them drop in. Obviously, we still have the clearance issue, so the radiator swap is next. But for the moment, this is looking pretty good. It's got these washers here. They're not lock washers, but I'm going to secure them as they are because at the weight of this thing and at the amount of torque that you're going to apply, looks like 5/8, yeah, to these bolts, they shouldn't, seizing shouldn't be a worry. I'm just going to tighten them in the next pattern. We're going to come back and hit them with the rated torque in a few minutes here while I piddle around with things. I want to say it's 25 or 30 foot-pounds, but I'm going to check anyway because you want to make sure that that gasket gets good compression. Air leaks are the death knell of a quality supercharger, especially when you're talking about air and fuel. It'll ruin the gasket. It just gets to be a mess. But as she sits, boy, that looks good. Kind of a monster, huh? Let me zoom in. I'm going to come in with this shaky cam, the hand cam here, and show you a couple little details. Let's get in closer. Intake mounted up. You can see how thick that gasket is. These things are great. And actually you can see right there where the part that's exposed isn't crushed. Isn't that cool? There's a lot of compression on these gaskets. So super happy with that. Everything's mounted up, everything's tight. Got our brace here, our strut. There's no, there's my GoPro shutting off. Yeah, there's not going to be any worry about the weight of this thing, but there's an additional brace that we're going to install here that bolts over here to the head for support, and we'll use that. I believe there's no boss on the head for it, so I may have to fab a standoff adapter for one of those manifold bolts. Oh no, you know what? Hey, it bolts down here to the water pump. Yeah. One thing about the kit, they don't give you instructions. There's no paper instructions, and I didn't see any on the website. You know, they have a couple pictures, but they're like 640 resolution. So that's something that maybe they could work on, but you know, who am I to tell them their business? All I'm doing is using their parts. Okay, everything's getting tightened up. First bracket's in place. Second bracket is this collar here, and I put it in the only way it made sense to me. Keep it down out of the way, you know, but this is a nice straight connection angle. I saw a picture where it was mounted up here and the bracket's coming up. I'm like, well, it doesn't take much torque to move that out of the way. You want to lock it in place so it is an anchor to keep everything from pulling. You know, we're shifting. Keep the snout exactly in place, you know, aligned with the motor, just in case your head unit has for some reason, has a little movement in it. So this is what worked. And I just got from the bolt pin, the longest stainless bolt here, the 9/16 for the water pump, and a flat washer. Everything should lock in pretty tight. You go back and check your fasteners later, but I'm not going to lock tight everything yet until I know that it's all in place and well fitted, and then I can go back and loosen up the critical fasteners like here, and you know, do a little bit of blue Loctite and excuse me, blue Loctite to make sure that they all sit right. Anyway, it's coming together, looking pretty good, I think. Yeah.
This is an apology video. I think YouTubers are supposed to have one of these, but since the only controversy I had is making you guys wait too damn long for me to grab another cup of black coffee and get this video out to you, I'm sorry. You are appreciated, you are loved. I'm sure all of your rides are dope, and if you have a video on it, drop it in the comments below. Drop a link. We want to see these. We don't do this for the money. This is all for the fun of it. And now, here's part 2 wrapped up, but part 3 is getting dropped back to back because we have gotten a lot done since you last tuned in. So, thank you for liking, subscribing. Please comment. I want to hear from you guys. This is the most fun I've ever had with my cars. I wish my other business hadn't been so, I guess, successful this year. I'd have had more time to drop these videos. So, you know, thank you for coming back. I'll see you in a couple minutes for the next one.